Las Cruces has done it. Santa Fe has done it. Is now the time for Albuquerque to use ranked choice voting in its city elections? Now, the system asks voters to rank their choice for office in contests with more than 2 candidates, then automatically runs the results round by round until a candidate tops 50%. Now, that eliminates the need for a runoff mayoral or city council election, but it's also a new way of voting on top of a new date for voting in Albuquerque's elections. The city council is considering the idea, and MIF producer Matt Grubbs talks with elections expert Lana Atkinson and advocate Maria Perez.
Ranked choice voting could not sound any more straightforward. Rank the candidates for any given public office where more than 2 are running, and then let election software crunch the numbers until someone comes out on top. Maria Perez, formerly of Fair Vote New Mexico and now with Common Cause, knows that is not an easy sell. And Lana Atkinson, director of UNM's Center for the Study of Voting, Elections, and Democracy, knows all about the relative strengths and weaknesses of our voting system. So thanks to you both. Albuquerque has this in the works. Maria, where does it stand right now?
So there are actually 2 ranked choice voting bills moving through the legislative process in the city of Albuquerque right now. One of them is asking for the voters to decide if they want ranked choice voting, and the other one is saying that the city council by ordinance should vote on whether the city should have ranked choice voting or not. Both of these bills are going to be heard and discussed on their merits at City Council on the June 17th meeting.
Okay. So this will be actually in full City Council now, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Did they still have to go through the Finance Committee or no?
No, they both bills were pulled out of Finance.
Okay. Okay. So there are other cities that have this, Las Cruces and Santa Fe. Santa Fe went to the voters and said, should we include this method in the city charter? And they said yes. Las Cruces, was that a council vote?
Yes, so when Santa Fe did this, by the charter itself and the way that state law was at that time, it had to go to the voters. This was in 2008.
Okay.
So the voters, 65% of the voters said, yes, we want ranked choice voting, and then it took the city 10 more years to implement. Las Cruces, because of a change in state law, the cities that have a top 2 runoff system, like Albuquerque, like Las Cruces did, can now, by ordinance, a simple majority vote by ordinance in the council, that's what they can do to adopt ranked choice voting, and that's what Las Cruces Council did. They unanimously voted to adopt ranked choice voting. So they will be having the first ranked choice voting election this November. It's a mayoral election, and it's pretty exciting. I'm actually heading to Las Cruces after this today.
Okay. So there is some degree of fear, I guess, over just sort of a new system of voting. Lana, as you look at different ways to elect city officials or state officials, whatever, why do people sort of fear, I guess, the idea of something being new or having to rank their candidates?
Well, I think it's more complicated.
Okay.
Right? I mean, so the first thing is it's more complicated for voters. Should I vote for all of them? Should I rank everybody? What happens if I only rank some? Does the software work? All of these kinds of issues. So, and I think people are very uncertain about how that works, right? So that creates some uncertainty. That being said, in the post-election survey, we saw 51% of voters statewide support ranked choice voting and 49% not support it. So it's a very tight race at the public level.
Sure. We've seen Santa Fe do this on a very short timeline, we should add. You were part of a lawsuit to force the city to abide by its city charter. When that happened, I remember covering that for the Santa Fe Reporter, but the city was very concerned that people just wouldn't be able to get it. What did you see during that election?
So we actually did an exit poll, and Lana helped us get that done. And what we saw was that 93% of the voters found the system they were either satisfied or very satisfied with the system. We found that 65% of the voters, and this is through data that we got from the city after the election, 65% of the voters ranked all 5 candidates for mayor. So, this tells me not only that people were not intimidated, that they found it an intuitive way of voting, but also that they got it, right? They were in it to win it. 65% of the voters ranked all of the candidates available to them on their mayoral ballot. So it went really well in Santa Fe. There was a 10% increase in voter turnout. There's different factors for that, but I think ranked choice voting was definitely one of them. And, we have a mayor that got 66% of the vote. He's got a mandate. It worked well.
And it went all 4 rounds, right? There were 5 candidates,
Yes.
and it went 4 rounds until they wintered it down to 2. Is this an efficient system? When we look at cities like Albuquerque or like Las Cruces, that do require a runoff and require a 50% plus 1 vote majority.
It really makes sense for cities that require an over 50% majority for an elected candidate. It makes sense because it's more efficient, it's more cost effective, it happens all at once, so you don't have to have 2 campaigns. Usually campaigns sort of exhaust voters. In the last election in the city, we pretty much saw turnout remain the same, but that's atypical. Usually we see a drop off in turnout in the second round, so you really pick up more people usually in that first round. So all of those reasons, if you're going to demand a 2-tiered system, a system where the final 2 candidates, one of them has to get a majority, it makes a lot of sense, especially in a nonpartisan context where those cues aren't there. You could say the one negative might be that the race sort of changes its context when you have ranked choice voting. So the proponents of ranked choice voting say one of the benefits is that the candidates themselves sort of don't engage in as much negative campaigning because they're trying to get that second vote or that third vote or fourth vote, however many candidates there are. And so I think from a normative perspective, the lack of competition at that level, right, is something that could be a potential negative in a contest. Just because if you're looking for the second vote and the third vote, maybe you're not criticizing your opponents as much, right? Which maybe is a positive because people see it as more positive. But the point of politics and campaigns is to draw out differences, right? And so that's the thing that I think is probably one of the biggest potential sort of negatives. But I think a city like Albuquerque, it makes a lot of sense.
So looking at this from the voter's perspective, if you're a voter and you're sort of undecided, you want to see some of those sharp contrasts, to figure out, okay, is this person really, my choice, or what don't I like? But if they're all playing too nice, potentially, you don't see that?
Exactly.
Okay. Sort of throwing a wrinkle into all this is there's so much that goes on. We were just talking before we started rolling about legislation that passed in the last session. There's so much that changes from election cycle to election cycle. One of the big things is the Local Election Act, in which municipalities can opt into a November election, and Albuquerque has done that. That kind of changes the game a little bit, especially when you consider a runoff. Because if you have a November election and then your runoff is in early December when everyone's trying to get, the kids through the last part of the school year before Christmas hits, that sort of thing, do you see ranked choice as either, I guess, fitting better or worse in a system like that, where you have your first election in November and then a potential runoff in December?
I think it makes a lot of sense, it's more cost effective. And I think that's a really important point for the city. It also, as we just discussed, probably leads to higher turnout in the first round. So for those reasons, if you're requiring a 50% plus 1 margin of victory, then I think it really makes a lot of sense to move to a ranked choice system. Also in a nonpartisan contest where you don't have partisan cues, maybe that makes more sense as well.
Okay. Maria, is that sort of the case that you're making to the counselors as you go around and sort of plead your case with them?
Yes, and I'd like to touch on the point that you just made, which is having a runoff right before Christmas. Between Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's some data out there that turnout definitely suffers from around Christmas runoff. That is a point, definitely. We want to encourage participation. It's hard enough for voters to go out to vote one time sometimes. A lot of times people have multiple jobs, kids to run around. In our state, we are lucky to have had leadership that has tried to address this, and we have voting convenience centers, for example, right? So that you don't have to vote in your precinct, you can vote in any voting center within the city. Make voting more accessible to people. I think that's very important. But having an election right before Christmas is not great. And then the other point, to second what Lana was just saying, the county clerk is the entity that would be administering this election, and they're saying that it would cost the city, at least $800,000 to administer a runoff election, even if it's just one council race that goes to a runoff without adoption of ranked choice voting, because you can't just open a couple of voting centers within one precinct. We have voting centers for the convenience of the voter, right? So they would have to open voting centers all over the city. There's no way to run a runoff on the cheap, right? Another thing about the Local Election Act and this 50-year election law cleanup bill is that now the state will pay for your election if you opted in to the Local Election Act, right, to November elections.
So everybody's doing this November odd year election for
Right.
things like the water board, potentially the school districts, municipalities, that sort of thing.
Right. So if the city of Albuquerque has opted into that, so the state pays for that election, but the state only pays for that first election. If it goes to a runoff, the city's on the hook for that expense.
Oh, okay.
Right? So it, again, as far as cost effectiveness, if the city adopts ranked choice voting, the cost of the city is basically zero. But if they don't, then the cost of the city is close to $1 million.
Okay. It seems like a pretty, I think, foreign concept for people who are used to just going and checking a box or filling in an oval, whatever the system is. There was a big public education effort in Santa Fe once the court said, you must do this.
Mm-hmm.
The city spent money on educating. Interestingly, the public information officer from Santa Fe at that time is now Tim Keller's spokesman, Matt Ross. How does public education play into this?
It's huge. I mean, the most important thing is for voters to know what they're coming into when they go up to the polls to vote.
What that ballot is going to look like?
Right. So what we did in Santa Fe was to make sure that as many voters as possible just saw an image of what the ballot was going to look like. Right. And the city of Santa Fe did a great job developing a branding. Right. I don't know if you've seen
With
it
all
with
the
little
animals.
Yeah. Keep it non-political. It wasn't about candidate. It was about a bear and a lizard and a deer or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And we just plastered the city with that. I made stacks and stacks of postcards with those mock ballots, and we gave them to all the candidates because they were door knocking for their own campaigns. They were giving out those postcards. Anybody who was doing Get Out the Vote work, the League of Women Voters, the party, different folks were giving out those postcards. We put the image of the ballot on the sides of buses, on the busiest lines in the city, so people who were just on the street get next to a bus or behind a bus, they would see the ballot. So we had about 8 weeks to educate the voters in Santa Fe, and like we said, it was very successful. People found it intuitive, and even people who had never seen the ballot before found it intuitive. Right? It's not. We rank things every day, so it's basically you're asking people, which candidate do you love? And if that candidate can't win, which candidate do you like? It's not that complicated. The complicated thing gets what you were saying, in tabulation, which is where the software crunches the numbers. But voters, they can rank. That's not a foreign concept to people. So voter education is important, and people already know how to rank. So it's not a foreign thing that we're asking people to do.
And you talked about the what was it, a 10% increase in voter turnout? That's 10 percentage points. So these are fairly low turnout city elections, and this one was pretty robust as far as Santa Fe's history goes. Lana, is there any reason to think that ranked choice voting is any more or less susceptible to either hacking or some other sort of physical tampering?
Then no, I don't. There's very little likelihood of, especially electronic tampering, given our system is so. Federally, it's all local, very local. Things aren't connected. We don't pass the information over the internet in terms of the numbers. The system is very, very reliable and safe. Okay. And I want to add that the voters in Santa Fe were very confident that their vote was counted accurately. The confidence level was really very, very high.
Is that just talking to them as they walk out of the polls, or is that talking to them after they saw the results.
That was right when they walked out of the polls.
Okay, okay. But it didn't, I guess, is that sort of reflecting that it didn't feel that different to people?
There's always, I mean, I think that's better because, I mean, there's always this sort of loser effect that we see in voter confidence, whereas if you're part of the losing party, suddenly your confidence goes down.
Oh, I see.
So it's actually better. It's like, how did you feel right when you voted? You know, and you slid your ballot into the vote tabulator and you saw it go ding, and you felt pretty good about that.
Sure, sure. You mentioned the possibility that it might not draw the contrast that some voters would like to see. It did, you know, you were both sort of paying attention. It changed the way they campaigned, certainly. I mean, we heard so much, you know, I'm number 5 on the ballot, but please make me number 2. I think that was Ron Trujillo's plea, you know, like it just, they were aware of it. Maybe they didn't get sort of the nuance as to how they could be most effective. Are candidates learning this sort of thing? Do you see any evidence of that, or is it still pretty new?
Well, it's very new, but I mean, it's something they have to think about. You have to change your strategy when you're thinking about, you know, that you want second and third place votes. So you have to think about that, and so that's what happens. They're campaigning for those other votes. I mean, on the positive side, in a local election, I think that, you know, competency and these other characteristics might be very important, and maybe those become more important in that process than sort of, you know, policy positions that really at a local level are about services.
Okay, great.
And if I may add about the positivity of the campaign, if you will, right? There's in places that have had ranked choice voting for several election cycles, like, you know, San Francisco or Minneapolis, what we see is that candidates do get more savvy about it, right?
Okay.
There's a saying in my ranked choice voting world, which is distinguish but not disparage, right? So like as candidates, you have to find a balance where you distinguish yourself from your opponent, but you're not trash talking them.
Okay.
Right? So you distinguish policy positions, but you're staying away from personal attacks.
Okay, Maria, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you both so much again. The City Council meeting is June 17th. Thanks to you both.